Hi there, I'm Lindell Gaudio, and alongside Emily Fisher-Bunker, your two co-hosts for the Immunity Blueprints Summit. And today, I'm thrilled to introduce you all to Pooja Chilukuri. Pooja is a nutritional therapy practitioner, an author, a coach, speaker, and just an all-around amazing person. So
Thank you.
Pooja, welcome. I'm so glad, my dear friend, to have you here today. So
Thank you, Lynn.
please tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and how you got interested in holistic approaches to wellness.
Of course, and thank you very much, both you and Emily, for having me on here today. So I never used to be a nutritional therapy forever, right? I started out working as a researcher in the semiconductor industry, and I did that job for over 10 years. It was a corporate job, but I had to leave. It's a job that I really loved, but I had to leave because working full time and I had little children. And around the same time, I was diagnosed with reactive airways disease. And that was very, very hard for me because all day long I just couldn't breathe. And no one understood what it was, why I had it. You know, I was just going from one doctor to another. I was on all kinds of prescription meds and inhalers and stuff like that. And nothing was helping. And I used to also break out in like really bad hives. And around the same time, my husband was also diagnosed with a couple of autoimmune conditions. He had psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis. So between the two of us being not healthy and having little ones that needed us, I decided, you know, it was the right thing to do to just leave my corporate life and then just staying home. My husband was the one that put me onto it. And he said, well, if you have some more time now, why don't you research these things? And why don't you find us a way to get us healthy? So that's where I started, you know, went on the internet, and it led me down several rabbit holes and very confusing. So I figured that was not the way to go, in that I should go and get a formal training in something that would health and wellness related. And the most intuitive thing for me back then to do, because I just knew that, you know, putting what we put inside our bodies is like super important.
Right.
I just figured I was doing something wrong, because for both of us to get sick like that, you know, I had to take some responsibility for it, right? Mm-hmm. So nutrition was what just came up for me, and that's when I studied nutritional therapy. And once I gained all that information, it's like several light bulbs went on, and I was like, wow, I need to share this with other people. How do I do that? So teaching wellness classes, that was a way to do it. And coaching, because just having the knowledge and sharing it isn't enough.
Right.
I had to find a way to help people through making those changes. So that's how it all came about.
Wow, what a journey. That's awesome.
Thanks, Emily.
You talked about autoimmune and autoimmune disease, and inflammation, we know, is at the root cause of all disease. Can you explain what inflammation is, how it's connected to our immune system? Maybe discuss if there is, you know, a good type of inflammation versus a bad type of inflammation.
Yes. So inflammation at its very core is basically an immune response. So whenever our bodies see something that they perceive as a threat, all of these chemical messengers will come into play to recruit all the cells of your immune system. So let me just see if I can simplify this, because the immune system is so complex. Mm-hmm. To me, it's like a biochemical miracle, you know. Yeah. And one of the things, so we have all these lines of defenses. If you think about a fortress with a wall, the first place that would be breached would be the wall, right? So that would be like your skin, your mucous membranes, the lining of your gut, the lining in your lungs, you know, just anything that's open to the outside is vulnerable. And once that is breached and something gets in, then we're calling the frontline soldiers that will come and launch an attack. And when they launch an attack, think of, you know, all the guns that they're firing all their weapons. And when they're firing those weapons, we are sensing that as inflammation. Those are chemical messengers, and they signal for like your special forces, which would be like adaptive immune system, which is already trained. They're very well trained. They know what to do with the specific invasions. So this whole inflammatory cascade is actually for healing. So in and of itself, it's very crucial to our survival. We need inflammation to survive, to get rid of the threat, to get rid of the invaders. The problem happens when it can't turn off. Because once the invasion is over, the threat is over, it's your immune cells, they know to repair, they know to heal the tissues, they know to heal the damage. So it's a fine balance between inflaming and anti-inflaming. That's how the immune system works.
Between acute inflammation, which is necessary to fight infection, or if we break a leg or something, but the chronic is really dangerous.
Yes, because the acute is actually helpful, right? If you have like a piece of splinter that got stuck or you got a cut or something, the acute inflammation will control that infection. It isolates it. It's launching its attack to heal and repair. The chronic inflammation is when the trigger is always there and the immune system just doesn't catch a breath and can't turn off. And so when it can't turn off, then the tissue damage and repair is significant.
Yeah, and I love your analogy. I love how you use the fortress.
Yeah.
Yes.
That really resonates with me. Yeah. So let's say, so inflammation is a huge thing with autoimmune, or all disease for that matter. So say you're walking around with symptoms or even without symptoms. How do you know, like, are there tests for these markers? And if so, are there different types of inflammation that you test for? And explain all that.
Yes. So there are blood tests that you can get at your doctor's office. And the two that they would commonly do is something called a CRP test, C-reactive proteins. Your liver makes them in response to inflammation. And they can check the levels on that. It should be, they're saying, it used to be under 3, but now they're stricter and they're saying it should be under 2. Oh. So if you have an acute inflammation because you hurt yourself or you're fighting a fever or an infection, those numbers are going to be really, really high. But if you have chronic inflammation, they may not be as high, but they'll still be higher than 2 or 3. So that's a good number to have, when you go for your physical. Mm-hmm. And they also look at something called an ESR. And you can request, they come as part of the physical, but sometimes you have to request your doctor, so they know to add these things on. And that's the erythrocyte sedimentation rate. That takes a look at how your red blood cells behave. And if there's inflammation, they were able to check from that test. Mm-hmm. A third test that I recommend is the hemoglobin A1C. That's a measure. Usually doctors will use that to predict diabetes.
Right.
That number is above 6. You're definitely in that type 2 diabetic range. But it can also be like an indirect measure of inflammation because sugar is very inflammatory. So that lets the doctor know that, there's something going on there.
What other causes can you have for chronic inflammation?
Wow. So just about anything and everything that we're exposed to these days, right? But I don't need to give you all bad news because there's good news. There's a lot we could do about it. But, to start with your environment, it's a big source. The soil, the air, the water, the toxins that we are exposed to. There is something called oxidative stress that is basically, there's all these metabolic reactions that are going on in our bodies, right? And they create these free radicals. That's just from being alive and having all these reactions going on in your body. But there are certain triggers that will trigger the production of free radicals.
You just explain, in case the viewers don't know what a free radical is.
Yeah, so it's like these reactive oxygen species that they are charged and they're looking for electrons. And so the antioxidants, your body will make antioxidants to neutralize it. But when the balance is off, when we are exposed to stress, to toxins, cigarette smoke, belly fat is inflammatory also. So all these things, and then having a poor diet will definitely, and by poor diet, I mean like refined carbs, sugars, alcohol, fried foods, trans fat, all of those things can keep inflammation going.
Right.
It's like the kindling that feeds the fire that keeps it going.
Right. And that's just one type of stress, because what you're putting in your body can be stressful to your body, much like as if you go out and you hurt yourself playing basketball, that's a stress. You can have stress by putting in, inhaling cigarette smoke, all those things.
Yep, a number of things. But
So,
fortunately, your body does make antioxidants, and otherwise we would all die. Like there's something going on that is trying to protect us. It's when it's overloaded and the balance is off.
right.
So
So can we talk a little bit more about some other food and environmental sources that we may not even think of, maybe that we're consuming or ingesting or taking in every day? Like you mentioned sugar. Let's start with food. So sugar's a big one. Alcohol.
yeah, trans fats. So I'll start with sugar too, because sugar is a big one. We don't realize, how much processed foods we consume, and to make those foods taste good, there's plenty of sugar in them, right? Sugar will combine with like fats and proteins in your blood, and it creates something called AGEs, advanced glycation end products. And AGE ironically spells age, right?
Yeah.
So these are molecules that will age you fast, like wrinkles and gray hair and what have you. When you think of aging, think AGEs. So, and sugar is a big, contributor of that. So having too much blood sugar, having high blood sugars, definitely. And sugar can also suppress your immune system and lower your ability to fight infections. So again, inflammatory. So we have that. And then we have trans fats and fried foods, because you need the right balance of fatty acids to manage inflammation. There's the omega-3s that are anti-inflammatory. Then we have like the omega-6s, we have trans fats, all of those are inflammatory. And in the Western diet, what I read last was that the balance was off. Omega-6 to omega-3 is typically 2:1 or 3:1, but we're at an all-time high of like 50:1.
Wow.
So that's like really skewing the balance the other way, right? Towards inflammation.
Wow.
So the processed food, the chemicals in the processed foods, just all of those. Because remember, everything we eat not only affects us, it affects the microbiome that is living inside us, right? And those guys are very, very good at helping us and training our immune system even. So anytime there's inflammation in the gut, it's going to turn systemic. And there's some very good papers, if people are interested to follow this research. The National Institute of Health has a pretty good database, and they have a collection of papers that talk about, just the gut inflammation turning into systemic inflammation.
Can you just explain, in case people don't understand systemic, what that means?
Yeah. So gut is localized, right? It's just in one little organ. Systemic would be when it spreads throughout the body, and it can damage other tissues and other organs.
Can you also explain, you said, what we eat affects us, but it also affects our microbiome. Can you explain how some of what we eat might contribute to inflammation? Like even things that maybe we consider healthy, like maybe nightshades, how they might harm us when, it's supposed to be healthy.
Yes. So what's happening these days, especially, and this does break my heart, because some healthy foods are actually turning harmful because the immune system is on overdrive. And, we have food allergies, food sensitivities, food intolerances. When we feed, so inside our bodies, the microbiome is not just bacteria, there's good yeast, there are other organisms living inside of us, and we have co-evolved, it's a symbiotic relationship. They not only train our immune system, but they also, can produce like serotonin, which is a big neurotransmitter. They keep us healthy in many, many ways. But they also need something from us, and that is to feed them. We have to feed them. They're our allies. Processed foods and chemicals and just toxins can be very disruptive to them. So when we're eating whole foods and real foods, we're doing a lot of TLC, taking care of them. And so in return, they take care of us. But when things go wrong, when there's inflammation there, and the immune system, which about 70% of that is in our gut, When that's on high alert, it can start flagging foods as enemies and threat. So we develop food allergies, we develop sensitivities, and food intolerances, that's a little bit different. That's more of not being able to digest.
All three of those real quickly. Can you explain like the difference between the food
Yes.
sensitivity, intolerance, and allergy? Because that's
Yes.
a big deal.
Yes, it is a big deal. So food allergies, I think, needs no introduction. You know, just the smell or even a tiny piece of that food can be so offending that someone could go into like an anaphylactic shock, or maybe they just have shortness of breath and breakout. So you see those things with food allergies. And the test for that is an IgE antibody test. And it's very commonly done. I mean, your doctor could do it like with a skin prick or, you know, a blood test. With food sensitivities, those are a little bit different. The reaction may not show up immediately, but many people report like 2 or 3 days later, just having joint pains, headache, fatigue. All of those are immune responses, right? The immune system has launched an attack and you're feeling it. You may not feel it immediately. So there are a couple of tests that are available. One of them more recently is questionable. That's the IgG antibody test, because there's a camp that believes that the very fact that you have those antibodies means that you've developed a tolerance for those foods, and so you should be okay. But still, some of these home testing kits and others have the IgG testing, and also the validity of that test. I don't know how reproducible it is. So you can have, you could be allergic or sensitive to something based on that test, and then if you do it in another lab, they may not see the same results. So a lot of people are moving to something called the MRT testing, which is a mediator release testing. And it looks at what happens to your white blood cells in the presence of an antigen. So a lot of practitioners are now moving to that. Having said that, though, I don't want to undermine the value of the IgG testing, because a lot of my clients will bring them into me. And by staying away from those foods, they feel better. So, you know, to me, if it works for you, go for it. And food intolerances are more with things like lactose intolerant, right? You're missing the enzyme to digest that food. And some people cannot tolerate fructose either. Like, so you'll see that they have digestive distress when they eat fruits and vegetables. And you have symptoms like diarrhea, constipation, bloating, belching. But remember that if we keep eating those foods that we're not able to digest, that's going to be a load on the microbiome. That's going to be a load on the immune system. So listening to our bodies is very important.
How does the chronic inflammatory response specifically affect our immune system? If we're continuing to eat foods that our body doesn't tolerate, if we're continuing to be under high stress, how does that chronic inflammation affect us and our immune system?
So the way I like to think of it is, suppose I'm working on like 50 projects at the same time, right? And 2 of them are like super important, but 48 of those are not urgent, not important, but they have to be done today. So I'm lowering my efficiency to work on the one that is really, really important, right? And the point that I'm making is our bodies are constantly looking for balance, constantly looking for homeostasis. And the immune system that has a big role in regulating that. But here's the thing. What is it supposed to do? Is it supposed to go after the rogue cells that could turn cancerous or could hurt you? Or is it supposed to deal with this oxidative stress that we're giving it right now? So where is its attention, right? So the more we load it up, we reduce its efficiency. And then when we really need it, it can't help us because it's tired from all that chronic inflammation. And so chronic inflammation is at the root of every major disease. You know, cancer is a big one. Asthma, autoimmune, Alzheimer's. Like, there is no disease which isn't linked to inflammation.
Right, right.
So,
well, so sounds like a lot of bad stuff, but there's things we can do. So,
yes.
So let's talk a little bit about anti-inflaming. So what are some of let's start with some foods that we can eat that will help us with this oxidative stress load and create the anti-inflammatory response.
So the body makes antioxidants, right? And one of the master antioxidants that the body makes is glutathione. And some foods that we can eat that will boost the production of that would be things like garlic, onion, radish, any of the crucifers that have the sulfur. So cabbage, broccoli sprouts, all of that. Mm-hmm. So that's one class of the anti-inflaming foods, right? Mm-hmm. Another thing you will hear again and again is fruits and vegetables because of all the colors. So the fruits and vegetables, they develop these colors as a response to their natural predators and threat, right? That's their immune response. And when we're consuming all those colors, that helps us to put out the fire. We're seriously helping our immune system. We're saying, I'm here to help you, let me help you. And so we're providing them the weapons to put out that fire. So the easiest, rather than giving you like a list of superfoods, because again, I'm very aware of the fact that not everybody can eat everything. Right. So I don't want people to feel like, oh, I can't eat blueberries, so I don't have anything to anti-inflame. That's not true. But you can, the little mantra that I actually learned as a health coach, and I use it all the time, is go green. So choose whatever green works for you. Mm-hmm. Go blue. If you can't do blueberries, just do any berries. Go nuts and go fish. Nuts and fish to get the right balance of the right types of fats. Mm-hmm. So because the healthy fats are very, very important to manage inflammation. So you want the right mix, the omega-3, 6, 9, avocados, olive oil, all of those. We don't want fats from animal sources that have been fed grain because they are higher in the omega-6s. And this is a research that, so in the National Institute of Health has, from the Journal of Nutrition in 2010, they did a study and they published it. And the animals that were fed grass and were allowed to just be in their natural state versus the animals that were fed grain and, put in feedlots and stuff. So the fatty acid profile for the animals was different. Mm-hmm. So the grass-fed ones had a higher profile for the omega-3s, so the anti-inflammatory. So when we're consuming healthy fats, we just want to be mindful of the source.
We're all in this low-fat culture, but it should be bad fat versus good fat. I mean, instead of high versus low. I have my avocados every day and my salmon. Well, a few times a week, but avocados.
Yeah. And the thing is with human nature, once we find out something is good, we want to overdo it. And we find out something is bad, we just drop it like hot potatoes. Like we don't even want to touch it. I think good and bad is, again, that's not, I think it's more balance or out of balance, right? Because everything, omega-6, we need it. Mm-hmm. I keep saying it's inflammatory, but actually we need some inflammation, right? We need to be able to inflame. It's just when things go out of control, when it's out of balance.
So a lot of people, they don't like vegetables. Maybe they don't like seafood and the like, or they can't eat nuts. So a lot of people turn to supplements as an option. Are they beneficial? Can they be beneficial, or do you recommend them?
Yes, they can be very, very beneficial, especially if you cannot eat a variety of foods. And also because I feel like these days the soil is depleted. My grandmother, she passed away when she was 91, and she was really healthy. And one of the things she used to tell me is, look, you have to eat like 5 oranges where I got away with eating 1. And she didn't even know how to read or write, but she was on to something, right? But she knew that the soil is depleted and we're just not getting everything that we need. We've been on a low-fat diet for so long, and we really lose out on those fat-soluble vitamins, vitamin A, vitamin E. All of those are antioxidants, right? So we need those. So I think having a good multivitamin that's high quality, that has vitamins and minerals, I definitely think it can help. What I worry about is people overdosing on like high amounts of specific nutrients.
Yeah.
That type of thing, I think you shouldn't be doing on your own without a practitioner.
Yeah.
Without somebody that knows what they're doing and they can guide you. Zinc and selenium are very good for the immune system, but I've had clients come to me that were doing 50 milligrams of zinc, and it's too much. Because with minerals, you have to remember, if you increase one, you might deplete another. And zinc is one of them. You increase zinc, you might deplete copper. So, staying under 10 milligrams, having some copper mixed in that. So a good multivitamin, high quality, should have the right amounts. And I did, and I'm offering it for all of the listeners. It's on my website. It's a free download. It's a book that I did on a beginner's guide to supplements. So it explains how you can choose supplements.
I apologize. I should have said that right at the get-go, because you did write among your other amazing books. That's a very useful.
Yeah,
we'll have it in the info. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned balance too, especially, we're dealing with this virus now globally, and there's some things that people might intuitively think I should really jack up my supplements of D, or I really should probably be taking more of this. And so they overdo it, and that could potentially have the reverse effect than we want.
Yes, because so you want to boost your immune system to prevent things. But once things start, boosting inflammation, boosting your immune system means you're boosting their ability to inflame as well. So it's just that sweet spot and that fine line. Right. That's why I'm okay with the multivitamins and the regular doses. Omega-3, certainly my family does not like fish, so I definitely have to use that as a supplement.
Yeah.
And vitamin D, it's an immune modulator, but you have to be careful because you can overdo that very easily. So I think 4,000 or 5,000 IUs a day should be plenty.
Plenty, yeah.
But getting that checked at least once a year. I know most doctors will do it and insurance will cover it. So it's a good idea to get that checked because you don't want to overdo that. Then we can go the other way.
Yeah. And also too, when we're talking about like maybe you're starting to not feel well, I mean, sometimes it's timing is important too. And I mean, isn't zinc one of those, zinc and C? If I feel like I'm starting to maybe come down with, I don't wait 2 days until I'm feeling I immediately up my zinc, my elderberry, my C, and and pure water.
Yes.
And can you talk a little bit about water and how that impacts our immune system, especially good water versus,
Of course, my goodness, water will flush, right? So whenever I have an infection, I try to drink as much water as I can so I could flush out the virus literally. Mm-hmm. And also, water delivers all your nutrients to your cells. If we're dehydrated, we're doing all these supplements and whatnot, but they may never reach our cells if we're dehydrated, right? And so that's a big one. And water, also removal of toxins and waste and all those good, wonderful free radicals, right, we talked about. So water is super important.
So if you could, I know this is probably hard, but if you could take three of your top things that you would recommend our viewers do that they can start doing right now to boost their immune system or strengthen their immune system, what would you recommend?
Absolutely. So water we talked about. That's top of my list.
Okay.
Sleep. Oh my goodness. We don't have very good sleep habits and sleep hygiene because, we're working. We can't never turn it off. There's emails to be checked and Facebook and whatnot at night, right? Melatonin is a very powerful anti-inflammatory, and that's the hormone that gives us good sound sleep. So being able to sleep really well at night is very, very key. I'm telling you all these inflammatory triggers in the environment and we're being bombarded, but there is so much that our bodies are doing to help and support us. So if we can help and support our bodies, then we got a good partnership going, right? So sleep and then exercise. Exercise itself will create some free radicals, especially if you do it too long. But that also boosts your body's own ability to make antioxidants.
Mhm.
So in that sense, and just other things, flush out toxins, get your lymph moving, because the lymph doesn't have a pump, remember, the lymphatic system, which has to deal with most of the toxins, right? So to get that flowing, very important. Nature, oh my goodness, I cannot even, a lot of us live in places that we can't get out in nature. I love North Carolina, it's so beautiful, but I know people living in cities, it's hard. So just being able to listen to like nature sounds. You guys may know Dr. Joe Dispenza, and he's a researcher and a speaker. And his team, they did research, and I believe it was back in 2017, I'm not sure, but it was very recent. And they published that if you expose yourself to nature sounds for at least 2 hours a day, you may not be able to do 2 hours, but I'm saying even 20 minutes, right? And they said it triggered about 600 to 800 segments on the DNA for healing and repair.
Wow.
So, I think these are wisdom that's been around. Our ancestors knew this stuff. We didn't need science to, tell them what to do. They just knew what to do. And it's the same thing again and again. And staying as close to nature as possible, eating real foods, whole foods, oh, and I forgot to mention fermented foods.
Yeah.
Like some people cannot, again, if you're intolerant and your digestion's off, you won't be able to, might get distress from it. But if you can, kefir, yogurt, sauerkraut, and you can even make some at home, like salsas and stuff, if you actually prepare them at home. Those are very, very beneficial for your the gut bacteria.
As long as they don't contain a lot of sugar, though.
Yes.
Yes.
And it's nature and sleep, and when during sleep is where we've got these certain cytokines, proteins that actually promote the anti-inflammatory and boosting immune response. So when we don't get enough sleep, we're underproducing those elements. And exercise, like you said, is great, but of course we don't want to do too much. Then we've got too much cortisol being produced.
Yep.
And then the thing about being in nature, the plants actually release chemicals, phytoncides, that when they get into our bloodstream, they help boost our what they call killer cells, right?
Yes.
So all of those things we've known for thousands of years, but there is actual science, and it's all really important.
Do you have, I know a lot of people, they say they just don't get good sleep, but for, they try, they've tried everything. Can you give some tips to help people, maybe try some things that they haven't thought of to help maybe improve their sleep?
Yes. So I used to be one of those people. I just couldn't fall asleep. And I can only talk about some of the things that have helped me, because I know everybody is different.
Right.
But one of the things that I used to have like a little light on, and I have completely turned that off, trying to sleep in the dark as much as I can, turning off all your gadgets at least an hour before you go to sleep. Please do not watch the news before you go to sleep. Cortisol is going to go through the roof. And things that, even though I don't consider myself to be a warrior, but if there are open action items that I have to do that will keep playing in my head. So writing everything down, what you want to do the next day, it at least gives you that sense of settlement, right? You feel some control over your next day, right? So that way it's not all in here and keeping you up. So I make a really, really long to-do list, and it has really silly things on it, like cooking, taking a shower, like whatever is like an open thing in your head. You want to close that loop before going to bed, right? They say resolve all your issues. What is it? There's a saying, right? Don't let the sun go down on your anger. So there's a saying, right? So it doesn't have to be anger. Don't let the sun go down on anything that's a worry or that is an open thing. So that has helped me. And then being able to practice, just some meditation, some heart math techniques, some breathing techniques, and saying my prayers, whatever will help me to let go of the day,
Mm-hmm.
and then kind of ease into the night.
And also don't eat too late either.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And especially if you eat a lot of refined carbs too late, watch out for some bad dreams.
Yeah. So, Pooja, how do you support your clients? What does that look like? How do you help your clients?
Yes. So a lot of people that I work with have already been to the doctor. They're struggling with chronic symptoms. It could be like chronic headaches or chronic hives. Again, the reactive areas where they feel like they can't breathe, low energy, low moods, just a number of things for which migraines even. Sometimes they will go to the doctor and they can't find anything wrong. So my first line of action is go to the doctor, because I want to make sure there's nothing serious going on, right? And then get a physical done. And once we take care of that and we establish that, yes, there's nothing medically wrong, but we're still experiencing symptoms, so then let's do a deep dive and look into your nutritional deficiencies. Because remember how vitamins and minerals were discovered? When there were serious deficiencies, people would have symptoms. And these days, we don't have scurvy, we don't have rickets in this part of the world, at least, right? But we may have other underlying chronic conditions or symptoms which are coming from not having a balance of minerals, vitamins, fats, proteins, things like that. So we do an assessment to see where those deficiencies are. And then we work with whole foods and lifestyle changes to meet those deficiencies.
Good. So where can people find you? And your book, we're going to have a link. I think, but website, email,
Yes.
all that.
Yeah, so my website is poojachilukuri.com. And there is a tab that says Pooja's Books, and there is a free download for the supplement book. It's a free download for the listeners. So you can just click on download and it'll download it for you. And then that's my website. I'm on LinkedIn as well. And I have a Facebook community where I post like videos for health and wellness tips. It's called Be Made Whole. And so those are the three places that mostly can find me.
Thank you so much for all this wonderful information. We appreciate you taking the time to share it with all of our listeners. So thank you so much for being with us today.
It was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.